Right, good afternoon, everybody that has linked into this webinar on today, the 3rd of February 2022. The first month of the year has already gone. This is Aquaculture Africa Magazine's first webinar of the year, and it's been some time since we've had one. We had one at the end of or late last year after a really nice full year of webinars. It's really exciting to be back. And I am really keen to share a lot of news with you about our upcoming webinars this year and also about the improvements that we've been making at Aquaculture Africa Magazine. But we do need to get into today's very important webinar before I get to those announcements. And when this topic came up last year, we thought of trying to get it into last year's program. But unfortunately, we couldn't secure a date, and it's really great to be kicking off 2022 with a discussion around women in aquaculture. From my side, I've challenged the policy position, and I've indicated that I believe we don't do enough to implement what the empowerment of women is as it's formulated in policy. And I can tell you in the last few days, I've got myself into hot water because people tend to disagree with my statement. But we have some experts today to help us through this discussion. I'll introduce those speakers to you shortly. We are still waiting for one of our speakers to link in online, but I'm going to get the session going. This webinar is 90 minutes long. You will see we've shortened the webinars from last year because we've realized that people don't want to sit through long, boring sessions. We want to bring you as much information in as short a time period as possible. So just a little bit about you or those of you that have not attended our live webinars before. We come to you unscripted with a live discussion. Otherwise, you could have watched all of this on a video recording, which is also quite boring. So Aquaculture Africa Magazine brings you these webinars under sponsorship, and I'll introduce those sponsors shortly. But in the process, we're growing a network to communicate not only with aquaculture in Africa, but also with aquaculture across the world. We've taken 400 odd registrations, or more than 400, for today's event. Many people don't attend these live, they watch the recording afterwards. But I can tell you registrations have been received from no less than 63 countries, of which 32 are African countries. I'm also very excited to say that Kenya is leading the pack today. In our webinars last year, it was Egypt, but about a quarter of the registrations for today's event were taken from Kenya. So thumbs up to Kenya. Really great to have all of you in the room. And then from across the world, I've discovered a new country, Timor-Leste. It's a country, I believe, somewhere in the Asian Pacific. And we've got one registration from that country. It's certainly a new country name for me. So welcome to you from Timor-Leste if you are listening. Traditionally, about 75% of our audience registers from Africa and around the other 25% from the rest of the world. Just one or 2 points before we get going. Please use the chat panel. I can see there are many chats coming through on that chat panel already. So please keep chatting, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, ask for people's email addresses and so forth. Then use the Q&A panel for your questions. It's easier for us to find your questions on the Q&A than in the chat panel. Thank you also to those of you that have sent questions beforehand. I've got them all listed here. We'll try and get to them. I can tell you that the webinar is being recorded and that you will get a link to the recording in your email tomorrow. I would also like to confirm that we do not issue certificates for these discussion webinars. We do not regard them as training sessions, although they are very important. So yes, no certificates, because we get asked that quite often. Then lastly, I will be showing the email addresses of all the speakers at the end of today's session. Right, our sponsors make these webinars possible, and we've carried these sponsors from last year. We hope to go into agreement for this year again. This webinar particularly was due to take place last year. So under those sponsors, I can proudly announce that we are supported by WorldFish. They have not only got a good global footprint, but they are very active in aquaculture in Africa. And I hope to bring you more news on the work of WorldFish as we go through this year. Skretting is not only a sponsor, they've also got a speaker in today's webinar, which I'll introduce shortly. But please go and visit Skretting's website. They've got an Africa-specific website, which you can see on the screen. And certainly Audrey, when I introduce her just now, will be saying more about Skretting today. Then lastly, the World Initiative for Soy in Human Health. Yes, they work with soy, but they are active in promoting aquaculture because soy is a key future ingredient of fish feeds. Right, on to our speakers. I see Kevin Main has not yet joined us on the panel. She is the first speaker, and if she doesn't link in the next minute or so, I will try and get hold of her as we introduce the other speakers. But I can tell you, Kevin is the director at Moat Marine Laboratory in the USA. She's very well known, not only across the world, but in Africa. And she's played a key role in getting aquaculture in Africa on the map. She's going to be talking about her journey as a woman in science, in aquaculture. And I really hope I get hold of her while we introduce the others and take the other talks. Another lady that does not need any introduction in Africa is Bernice McLean. Bernice is very well known for her policy work across African aquaculture. She is often involved with non-state actors. She gets involved with aquaculture standards, policies, and wherever things are happening on the continent, you will find Bernice involved. She's going to be talking to us about consideration of promoting inclusivity and gender equality in Africa's aquaculture value chains. Then our last speaker for today is Audrey Yambura from Kenya. She is the Regional Technical Manager for Skretting for the Middle East and Africa. Audrey studied in Kenya. She started her career on fish farms doing quality control, and then eventually moving to Skretting, where she's been climbing the corporate ladder. And I really look forward to much cooperation with her in the future. Nelly Isyagi was to be our other speaker. She has unfortunately been caught up in another commitment, and she will not be joining us today. So if I could ask Bernice and Audrey, if you can please open up your cameras, the audience can have a look at you. Bernice, could I also ask that we kick off with your talk, and then while you're talking, I will see if I can get hold of Kevin, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you, Audrey. Thank you, Bernice. I can see you guys clearly. Really fantastic to have you in the room, and look forward to your talks. Bernice, can I hand over to you to share your screen and take the audience through your discussion? Thank you.
Thanks, Etienne, and welcome to everybody. Thank you once again, Etienne, for all you're doing for aquaculture in Africa, and for raising the flag, the communications flag around it, and really promoting the industry on the continent. So I'm really looking forward to sharing my screen with you. I've just got a response here, Etienne, to share the screen, as I can't share it while another participant is sharing. So let me see if I can. There we go. All right. You can just confirm that you can see the screen, and then I'll put it on presentation mode.
That's great, Bernice. I can see your screen. You can go into presentation mode, and looking forward to your talk.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Okay, so just to kick off, thanks for the illustrious introduction, Etienne. It's always a pleasure to be participating in these webinars. And just to say that over the last couple of years, thanks to Kevin Main, who hopefully will join us, and a number of other really dedicated people, we are really setting the foundations for aquaculture on the continent, not only in terms of the policy environment, but also in terms of engaging particular stakeholder groups. And one of the avenues for which we do that, I'm going to give a bit of a plug to the African chapter of the World Aquaculture Society, which has been established and is now hosted within AUDA, and we're hoping to have the first conference in the coming months in March. So just to mention that what I'm going to be presenting today may look a little bit dry to some people, because it's more around the policy arena, what we've got in place, and then some theoretical sort of considerations on how to promote inclusivity and gender equity in Africa. But at the same time, we're also working at the ground level to try to see how to implement some of these recommendations. So let me just start off. These statistics are fairly old, but they do show some of the inequities that are existing in the fisheries and aquaculture sector as a whole in Africa. It comes from a piece of research that was done in 2014 that we are hoping to revise actually this year and next year as part of the FishGov 2 project. But basically, you can see that women make up more than a quarter of the total fisheries and aquaculture sector. And this has obviously increased quite substantially since 2014 as aquaculture has grown on the continent. But needless to say that most women are actually employed in the post-harvest sectors, and more so in aquaculture. While the statistics don't really reflect accurately at this stage the involvement of women, specifically in aquaculture, you'll see that we're only sort of represented as just under 5%, which is a very small amount, despite the age of the study. I would imagine that they would still be underrepresented in the statistics, because a lot of the contributions are what we would call informal in nature, and are not reflected in the formal statistics. That's one of the problems, is not having gender disaggregated statistics, but I'll talk to that a little bit later. But really, the contributions of women are generally insufficiently recognized in the different valuations. So we don't get enough attention, basically. It is improving. Now, in terms of Africa's enabling policy framework, just to take it from the policy perspective, we have at the continental level Agenda 2063, which is our continental blueprint, basically, for Africa's development. And we work within this, so it has a number of goals and aspirations and so on that we work towards, a bit like the Sustainable Development Goals. It is actually aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals, but it has more specific reference to Africa's goals specifically. So that is our guiding framework. Then we have the next one, which is the Policy Framework and Reform Strategy for Fisheries and Aquaculture in Africa. Now, this document is really the guiding document that we follow for fisheries and aquaculture, and it has a cross-cutting a number of policy arenas, and one of the 7 policy arenas is a cross-cutting one on gender and youth. So it is captured quite tightly within this document. More recently, we have the Continental Blue Economy Strategy. Now, in terms of aquaculture, or fisheries and aquaculture as a whole, the strategy really is there to implement the previous document that I talked about, the Policy Framework and Reform Strategy, and update a little bit in terms of emerging issues. But it has a section referring to gender inclusiveness within the governance side of things, but it's not explicitly captured, because within the Policy Framework and Reform Strategy, there's quite a detailed outline of gender. We ourselves from the African Union Development Agency have our own Blue Economy program, which looks at helping to implement the Blue Economy Strategy, and much of our work in the past has been in fisheries and aquaculture, so we're fully aligned with what's going on the continental level as an AU body. Now, for aquaculture in particular, we have a number of different documents, and I'm sad that Nelly's not here, because she's actually been really instrumental in developing these framework documents and implementing them over time. So for the different regions, we have specific guidelines and so on. But for the continent as a whole, we have the 10-year plan of action for aquaculture development in Africa from 2016 to 2025. And this document is aligned very strongly with the Policy Framework and Reform Strategy. As you can see here, it has a particular reference to gender and youth as the Policy Arena 8 cross-cutting issues. And it talks to increased access to resources as an outcome, as well as improved working conditions. So for further information, these documents are all found on the AU website, AU IBAR website, and our website. If you need more information, I'm happy to share with you. But this is really what's guiding us in terms of gender mainstreaming and increasing inclusivity. Now, that said, and here, Etienne, I'm talking to your comment about not enough being done in terms of policy implementation, and I fully agree with you. We have on the continent and in the different member states exceptional policies that really go far in terms of setting out the frameworks and so on. But where we're really falling down is the implementation of these policies. Now, I won't go into the various reasons for this. It's this gets very complicated when you start talking about those issues. But I thought I would segue now into looking at some of the best practices that we can do as practitioners when we are implementing policies and we are designing projects and programs, just to show some level of detail in terms of what we what we need to look at, actually. And it's not just a simple case of saying, oh, involve women in everything. It's a much more systematic approach to looking at an entire value chain of involvement and specific approaches that have been tried and tested, such as this gender transformative process. Now, just to give a shout out to FAO, a lot of the content here is I've borrowed from the work that they're doing, not in West Africa and elsewhere. But I thought it was an interesting approach to show just in terms of what can be done in terms of gender mainstreaming and increasing inclusivity in general. So just to start off with, you'll see this little diagram here on the right-hand side, lower right-hand side. I found really interesting because it talks about looking at product flow in terms of gender mapping along a value chain. And it's divided into both the informal sector and the formal sector. And you can see there, in terms of the sizes of figures, that women play a huge role along the informal sector, informal value chain. They're much more involved as small-scale producers and processors, and then they sort of lose traction and when it comes to retailing and marketing and so on. And then in the formal value chain, you can see that they really play a much lesser role. So it's important to look at these aspects, and here's where the gender sensitive disaggregation of data comes in, and the need to reflect these differences if we are going to make any kind of transformative efforts along the value chain. The wheel on the left-hand side, I'm not going to go into too much detail of it because it basically guides the process towards how we can create an enabling environment for inclusivity along the program development and evaluation side of things. So it has a number of components, talking to collective action, education, skills, property, finance, work, payment, and so on. And I'll go in the next slides just to talk to a little bit of what this means in terms of actual practicalities. The sort of the lighter color wheel spokes around the edges are more talking to the creation of an enabling environment for these other things to happen, and I'll speak to that in my last slide. So just to break down quickly some of these components when we're talking about project design considerations, what we need to look at in our project design in terms of collective action and leadership, elements such as what kind of power analyses inform project design, implementation, and monitoring, how we can look at embracing approaches that are contextually relevant and reflect gender relations, and look at innovative approaches that can be adjusted according to the specific circumstances and the need for specific impact. Really, I mean, this speaks to my heart, is developing long-term flexible funding programs. A lot of our work is really short-term project led, which really is quite tricky to drive transformation over the long term. But we are working with other organizations and trying to coordinate to make sure that these long-term processes are started and put in place so that they can continue over the longer term. This is a big one, supporting legitimacy of women's organization within decision-making processes. And this is something that we at the AU we're really trying to support over the last few years. I think hopefully some of the participants here have become involved in some of the networks and platforms, the non-state actor platforms that have been established in the different regions of the continent, as well as in our FishNet, which is an amazing network of really active women across the continent who are now putting their footprint in the regions as well as the national level. Capacity building and leadership training. This is really something that also speaks to our heart, and we in our organization, it's something that we're really trying to mainstream in all our programs, not just capacity building, but making sure that the relevant participants and gender sensitivities are catered for in these approaches. In terms of access to property, this is something that's really important in terms of access to property and finances for women in aquaculture. Is finding the land, having access to the land, long-term access to the land, getting loans, regardless of who you're married to or what your social status is, and making sure that we are sensitive to putting in place measures that can assist women to increase their asset ownership and have a strong tenure. In terms of decent work and pay, I think this really speaks for itself. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but really just making sure that there is gender equity in the workplace, and trying to remove any kind of, or create an enabling environment to enable this to happen in terms of equal pay and so on. Skills and education, this is a massive issue around the world, but specifically in Africa, where there's a huge inequity in terms of girls participating in schools and educational opportunities. And then social protection in terms of the different work burdens that women have to take on, and giving them a opportunity to engage in economic activities that are paid. So my last slide is really looking at this from a policy perspective. So what is an enabling environment that we can look at gender mainstreaming and inclusivity in developing and implementing policies specifically. Here I spoke to the approaches in terms of gender disaggregated data that I've mentioned now 3 times in the talk. It's very, very important because it really allows us to see what's going on and target interventions appropriately. And then also looking at specific gender focuses in terms of trade and investment and the like. I mentioned this already, long-term commitment to transformatory change and process and capacity development is something that's tricky within the current political cycle and project funding cycles, but it is something that is being addressed, and we are improving over time. This not only includes getting staffing balanced in terms of gender, but also looking at in terms of aquaculture, attention along the value chain in terms of women's involvement in the input side of things, in production, post-harvest processing, marketing, etc., etc. Now, I think I've mentioned already in terms of having more women involved in planning and decision-making processes and how important that is. It is really improving from what I can see in the last couple of years, even. Looking at value chain approaches to services and infrastructure, and women's role in designing these critical components of the value chain to make sure that they're appropriate and speak to the needs of women in particular. And that will help to improve working conditions and productivity. In terms of looking at the intersectoral approaches, and here again, this is something that, because I'm now working in industrialization division at AUDA, coming from the sort of the environmental sustainability side of things, it's really valuable to take a broader view of things. So to look at access to markets, food-related issues, so that they're not just about nutrition, they're not just about food security, but really go into a much wider ambit in terms of the entire value chain, in terms of infrastructure and so on. And this includes aspects of ICT, with access to ICT, health services, and so on. So really trying to take a broad perspective on the sector as a whole, and how we can facilitate inclusivity in the sector as a whole. Prevention of gender-based violence. I mean, again, it speaks for itself, but it's quite a difficult thing to engage with in terms of social policies and policing and so on. But it is something that needs to be considered when we are mainstreaming gender into policy decisions. And then just in terms of some of the processes that are underway at the moment in terms of Africa's trajectory in terms of interregional trade, the free trade, continental free trade area that has come into force and that we're trying to now implement. The importance of looking at women's roles in this, particularly in the informal sector, and what some of the decisions might do to impact women who have existing trade routes, maybe informally across borders. What are some of the considerations that we need to put in place to enable growth of their businesses and greater security and well-being? Circular economy and greening of the economy and bluing of the economy, and then technological innovations in terms of both enabling access to technological innovations, but also supporting ideas that may come out of women's involvement in decision making and women's involvement in science and innovation and so on. So how can we best support that? So I think I'll end it there. Hopefully I haven't put everybody to sleep, but just to say that these are some of the things that we are trying our best to incorporate into our jobs of work and into our project designs and so on, as we implement our policies. So thanks very much.
Fantastic. Bernice, as always, a really, really nice presentation from your side. So key information there that's coming through. And I must be deadly honest, Bernice, when I started in aquaculture, I was one of those people that thought if you say the empowerment of women, it's as simple as just creating a gap in the value chain, but it's not that simple. And I've certainly come to realize over the years that it's not just the case of putting a woman into a job. It's quite a complex socioeconomic challenge. So Bernice, thank you for highlighting that. Bernice, we'll get to a few questions and discussions after the next talk. I've unfortunately not been able to raise Kevin yet. I'm actually not sure, Bernice, you don't perhaps have a telephone number for her that I can try. Maybe somebody else that's listening can send through a number for me that I can try. But let's keep going. Maybe Kevin will join us. She might have got the time zone mixed up. But I want to keep going on the program. We are a half an hour in already. And we do have our next speaker lined up. I want to, at this point, just say again how excited I am to see that our audience is growing, not only in Africa, but internationally as well. You heard me at the start talk about the small country of Timor-Leste, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but really it's a new country for me, and I'm so excited to see people from far corners in the world. And in fact, Augustina from Timor-Leste is online with us. So Augustina, really great to have you listening to us from Africa. There are several prominent women in aquaculture online with us. I can see names like Madam Joyce from Uganda. Welcome, Joyce. Really nice to have you in this session. Marika, all the way from the Netherlands, Marika Massen. Marika, nice to see you around. But several other women. I know Karen Viverica is also online, and I'm going to try and twist her arm to say something just now, because she's got so much experience with working with the empowerment of women in Africa. I can't run through all the names of the people that are online. Really great to have all of you here. But let's get on to the next talk. Now, I want to emphasize how important it is that sponsors like Skretting make these sessions possible. without their backing, we would not be able to put these webinars together. And that's why we're so thankful to have somebody from Skretting with us today. Not only just a salesperson, but a woman that has really been making waves in aquaculture. She started her life in aquaculture, and she's now very much in senior position within Skretting within Africa. So Audrey, if I can ask you, Audrey Yambura from Kenya, to open up your camera, and you can try and get your slides shared from your side, Audrey. Audrey, I've introduced you already, but I'm really excited to listen to the few slides that you're going to present. It gives us not only a perspective of what Skretting is doing, but it gives us a perspective of the empowerment drive within Skretting. So without me rambling on too much, Audrey, the floor is yours. Let me know if you are coming right with your screen share, and then we can take it from there.
Thank you very much. I should be able to share my screen.
Right.
Please tell me when you are able to see my screen.
It looks like it's coming through now. There we go. We can see it. You can go into presentation mode, Audrey, and the floor is yours.
Okay, everyone is okay. As I said, as I have been introduced, my name is Audrey Yambura. I should correct 18 though. I am the regional technical manager for Eastern and a bit of Southern Africa, not the entire of Middle Eastern Africa. Mostly because it is divided between language speaking, Francophone and Anglophone, and we have the French speaking people and English speaking people, and I deal with most countries that speak in English because well, I don't speak French. So East Africa, mostly a few of Southern countries, a bit of DRC, although it is half speaking English and French, but that is my area of work. So I'm here to speak about Skretting. 18 told me to speak about what Skretting is doing within Africa to bring up women, to include women in what is going on in aquaculture, show them that there is an opportunity for them in aquaculture. And I should say first, we have not yet done anything major or groundbreaking to say that we are targeting women directly. But for sure, we have a target percentages or target equality and equity and uniformity when we come to recruiting people, when we come to project distribution, when we come to selecting farmers who are involved in projects. We take all that into key account. So I will talk about diversity and inclusion in Africa. So I would take a minute to introduce Nutreco. Nutreco is the mother company of the company that I work for, Skretting. And under Nutreco, there are 3 companies. We have the Skretting, which is now dealing with aqua. We deal with about 60 species of fish. We create feed for about 60 species. And then we have the Trout Nutrition, which works with land animals, cows, goats, pigs, and chicken. And the Nutreco Frontiers, this is more of the research and all that. So under Skretting, which is what we're going to measure on right now, we have, this is Africa, and where we have concentrated production. This is where most of our production is done and where most of our offices are based. We have Kenya, Egypt, Nigeria, Zambia, and South Africa. In these very areas also, we have tried to boost women, especially in projects and community development activities, trainings, and sessions whereby we invite everyone within the community to come and learn about aquaculture. Sorry, I went ahead a bit too fast. And I hope that is clear. That is just basically it. I should talk about Kenya a bit though. In Kenya, as recently as yesterday, we had a joint venture that aired yesterday between Nutreco and the East African known feed milling company, UNGA. We did this specifically to boost aquaculture in East Africa. Feed is a big issue, and we all know, I'm sure a lot of the people in the audience are directly involved with aquaculture. Feed is almost the most expensive aspect and cost of starting up aquaculture. And that is why very many people either get disappointed because they get not very good feed or try to meal feed for themselves to make, they try to meal feed for themselves to make the costs get a bit lower or try to make everything better. But the initiative of making the joint venture is to produce feed at least better costs, the costs and the prices that can be able to boost aquaculture in East Africa. And with this joint venture, we can be able, as Banish said, it is not enough yet is being done to boost women in this department. And with this joint venture, we have a standing ground, we have a local company that can tell us what is going on, where can we do, what can we do, which direction should we start from? And since it's a very new company, it is a personal goal to get women in this area running with the aquaculture business in the best, correct way possible. So this is just a short brief about employees in Skretting. This should be 1,000. We have more than 1,000 employees, all from 25 nationalities. We have 40 researchers with about 23 with PhDs. And we have collaborated with about 50 research organizations. So I would like to indulge into what are the diversity and inclusion targets for Nutreco. Improve our gender balance and obtain about 30% of women in senior position management by 2025. And achieve this starting in 2020 to engage steps 2 for external recruitment at the position N12, hire 50-50 male and female. For external recruitment at N8, these are positions that are job grades within Nutreco. Nutreco is a very, very big company. It is under SHV Holdings. You can feel free to Google it. And a lot of things go on under Nutreco. So we just use the job descriptions, the job codes to learn. So for external recruitments up to N8 and including N11, we hire third female, 33%. Candidate long list should be 50 for 50, 50-50 male, which means when we are recruiting, we should at least be able to shortlist. 50-50 male should be on the long list, and shortlist should be 1 out of 3 female, and there should be at least 1 female in our selection process. This is what happens within Nutreco as of 2019. Senior management teams have to have at least 1 member of an underrepresented nationality by 2030. This is also a very good aspect about Nutreco. We have, as I mentioned, over 25 nationalities within the entire company. We employ from far and wide. How are we doing currently at the moment? Recently, we have improved our gender representation at a senior level of N12 is a very high level by 1% to 22%. We are going in the right direction, but we want to accelerate. Therefore, we are taking steps to increase the number of women we hire and recruit externally. Our previous target was a third external hire should be female at N8 and above. The target remains in place, but now applies to N8 and including N11. At N12 and above, our ambition is to hire 50-50 male-female when hiring externally. All this is a bit of jargon and most of you wouldn't understand that, but the main points that we were trying to put across as Nutreco is that we prioritize women. I did not put everything that this diversity and inclusion document entails, but I thought I would explain. We prioritize what women have to bring to the table. We take all opinions, both from the male and the female equally, because as a woman in aquaculture, I do not have very many years of experience, at about 5. And in that short period of time, you experience areas whereby you get into situations whereby you are a lady among 6 men and your opinion is good, but because you're a lady, it does not stand out because you said it. So sometimes you have to get it through a guy, so it goes through. At Nutreco, we try very, very much to make this not happen. We also try to take out questionnaires and courses and surveys to get to know what is happening on the ground. Nutreco being a very large global company, it's very easy for somebody just one person or two to feel neglected, and nobody will know, because it's just one person out of 3,500 who will know. But when you look at it in a way where the HR is able to get to the last person on the ground and give them a platform to explain what they feel should be done, what is going on, what should be a target, everybody gets a chance to say this. And generally the women get a platform and they talk about their pains, they talk about their benefits, they talk about what they like more about Nutreco. And generally this makes Nutreco the good company it is. Nutreco generally is considered a very good company to hires very well, because it has a good reputation going around. I would like to go down to community-based projects that we have in Africa. I did not put everything down. There is so much Skretting is doing on community-based projects, some at individual OPCO levels like Skretting Nigeria, Skretting Egypt, and Trout Nutrition South Africa. This is on land animals, and also /Skretting Zambia. But I would like to just go an overview of what we do. Skretting trickled down from Nutreco has set projects around Africa to help boost aquaculture within Africa. A very good example of this is the Catfish Community Development Project. That was the first community project. It was in 2016. This time, what we did, we got farmers received technical support, sharing best experiences, and physical visits to pond sites where we address questions and assist in resolving challenges from the Skretting team. This project specifically wasn't really directed to women only, because, well, there are men who are farmers also who have employed women. What we did mostly, we took a very fair number of men who are farmers, women who are farmers, and we also encouraged a gender equality scenario whereby most men who own the farms have employees who are women, employees who come to the farm on casual basis who are women, employees or owners of farms who were women, and also encourage them not to put the women of the community, whether educated or not educated, aside. This way, we were able to also hold trainings for these farmers, and whatever trainings we do, we invite farmers and their employees to come and attend the training, learn about aquaculture, and spread the word, basically. 50 farmers participated in the first phase of the project. They were pioneers and trusted Skretting and the JDPC in this project. After the harvest, the excellent result obtained by the participants motivated farmers in the surrounding area to join. During the 3 next years, the project grew to include 258 farmers in Nigeria. This project was trickled down to Zambia, which wasn't as large as the one in Nigeria, but in Zambia in 2019, we had a community project. This was mostly female farmers, was targeted for female farmers. It wasn't as big, but it was there and the results were good. And we are planning more projects within East Africa, now specifically under our new company, Tunga. We have a local milling company under Unga. They sort of are our landlords. We set up a factory, and now we are supposed to distribute feed within East Africa. And with these resources at hand, it becomes easier to try and target a certain niche, a certain population, a certain goal. And it is easier for us to attain these goals when you have these resources at hand, compared to importing them from other factories within Africa and Europe. From a personal observation, Skretting directly and indirectly supports gender equality and representation. There is minimal discrimination, and there is an open platform, as I mentioned before, for anyone to complain anonymously. Within the organizations, we have senior leaders as women. We have the COO of Skretting. She's a lady. We have forum and events geared to encourage women to be part of aquaculture, whether as farmers or scientists. At Skretting, we have the annual Women in Scientists Day. And as a plan, not yet actualized, we are trying to find a project whereby we can speak to girls in high school, in junior high, to check and encourage them to try and take the scientific way, try to study courses like aquatic science, because in East Africa itself, there are very minimal people who are doing these things, because aquaculture is still in its infancy. So telling people who are really desperate in trying to get a job to study a course that does not really have an outright spoken job is becoming a bit hard. But with time, with our new organization, we're trying to get everything going, get projects going, community projects running. So within a few years, I should have a better story to tell. Yeah. So I think that is me for now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Audrey. That was fantastic. It's, you know, what I like the most is I think you've given an honest opinion on the hard work that Skretting has done. And I think you've honestly admitted that there is more work to be done.
Yes,
I can certainly go to other organizations, leading aquaculture organizations that have not worked as hard as you guys to empower women. And it's encouraging. It's really encouraging. And I look forward to checking in on this journey, maybe in a few months' time or a year or two from now. So Audrey, as I said to you before the session, I look forward to working with you in Kenya. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a session coming up about true fish in 2 weeks' time, but certainly looking forward to the road ahead. Audrey, time allowing, we'll take 1 or 2 questions at the end.
Yeah.
I see Kevin has been able to join us. And Kevin, my apologies if we buzzed you. I know it's early in the USA, and I know you're always willing and ready, but we started off the session. We've had a really great talk from Bernice and now from Audrey. Kevin, if I may introduce you once again, for those of you that don't know Kevin, she's really left big footsteps, big footprints in African aquaculture. She's been an absolute pioneer to help us in Africa to get going. And she has spent, I think, about 30 years now in aquaculture, and she's currently the director at the Aquaculture Research Center at the Moat Marine Laboratory. Kevin has also served as a past president of the World Aquaculture Society. And let me tell you this, she's actually been recognized and thanked by President Obama himself as a champion of change for sustainable seafood. Kevin, thank you very, very much for giving up your time. We know that you are also very busy, but Kevin is going to give us a short presentation on her journey as a woman in science and what the opportunities and challenges look like. Kevin, good morning, and I can see your screen already. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Etienne, and sorry that I am a little late. I must admit I got the time zone issue mixed up. Thought I had it straight, but at least I got in before the program was over. And so I'd like to share this morning with you, or this afternoon for you folks in Africa, my journey as a woman in science from a personal perspective. And so I'd like to first talk about where it all began. You know, my journey into science came from my love of the sea. And in college, I had been encouraged in my family at the time when I was growing up, women primarily went into business-related careers. And so I was focusing on business in college, and I took a marine science course and just realized that that's where I needed to be. And I had incredible encouragement from other mentors and advisors, which really helped me to become successful in the field of aquaculture. For example, Dr. Earl Siegel, who is pictured here, what a pioneer he was in teaching young students and encouraging them to move into the field. And he really took me under his wing, helped me to move forward. I became a teaching assistant for him, even as an undergraduate. And he taught me to love teaching and marine field research, which I got to many opportunities to do with him, and then later on throughout my career. The next step in my journey was to go to Florida, where I pursued my PhD at Florida State University. But when I was at Florida State University, there were huge challenges for women to get into the field of science. My committee did not really think that women should become doctors in biological sciences. And there was a lot of resistance to letting women join the club of scientists. And we only had one woman faculty member in the department at that time. And many of the other women students ended up leaving. But I had encouragement from my colleagues and that were fellow graduate students. And although I did always feel like I had to work harder than my male colleagues, they helped me stay focused. And I was determined. You know, that determination is a lot of what really helps you to become successful as you move into a career in the field. And so there I studied ecosystem research in a unique habitat called seagrass meadows, underwater seagrass beds. And at that time I was an ecologist, not in the field of aquaculture yet. And there I studied animal behavior, and I worked with this unique shrimp right here, studying animal behavior on underwater for many, many years. Here is this habitat where I was studying these animals, hundreds of hours on scuba together with my colleagues that were also studying that same environment for different aspects. And I was an animal behavior specialist at that time. When I was working on my PhD, I had the wonderful opportunity to meet Dr. Kenneth Lieber, who was my colleague at the time, also pursuing his PhD. And after we graduated, the two of us were determined that we could be scientists and move through our careers together. But there were many challenges with that because it was difficult for two scientists with similar backgrounds to move into a position in the same location. And so the first challenge I had is that I had a really excellent position at a laboratory, but we were moving to Hawaii. Now, Hawaii is a wonderful place to move, so I really enjoyed that opportunity, but finding employment for two professional scientists was a challenge. But after about 6 months, I had this opportunity, and this is when I really began my international aspect and moving into the field of aquaculture. I joined the Oceanic Institute as a director there for the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Regional Aquaculture Center for Hawaii and the Pacific Islands. And that led to another program that I worked on for many years there, the U.S. Department of Commerce's Asian Interchange Program. And this gave me incredible opportunities at a time when women in the US and around the world were really not moving into higher level positions. They worked as scientists, but usually not at these higher level positions. I was one of 6 directors of the USDA centers, and I was the only woman in that group. And as I traveled around the globe, working in all of these locations throughout Asia and the Pacific Islands, I was usually the only woman in the room. I did have 2 wonderful children that were born in Hawaii, also causing challenges for a woman in science. You know, I had a family to raise and I had a lot of traveling, but I had a wonderful husband who was super supportive of me and supported me to travel to places for long time frames to study aquaculture science. The majority of the farms that I visited around the world, and even still today, were working on traditional flow-through pond systems, the nearshore cage systems. This was the technology that was used in most places around the globe. And I had opportunities to visit places that few people in the US were going. I went to Vietnam back in the early 1990s. We had not even established relations yet with Vietnam, reestablished relations with them. And so I had a a group of scientists that I worked with in Vietnam got the proper visas and was able to go there and study what was being done in the field of aquaculture, mostly by men, although on this grouper farm that I visited in Vietnam, most of the people that were doing the hatchery work were the women. And so I think that it just shows that women were involved in aquaculture even in this early time when I was starting out my career. I also spent probably 2 to 3 weeks a year, every year in China, starting around 1990, and for more than 10 years, had the opportunity to visit farms, travel around, and work with farmers. And the goal of this work was to bring together scientists in Asia together with scientists in the United States. This opportunity allowed me to really get a broad understanding of what was being done in aquaculture globally and who was doing it and who the key leaders were. In the Pacific Islands, the focus there was on developing farms with unique species in places where nothing was currently existing. We were working on technologies to farm things like giant clams, black-lipped pearl oysters, and corals. And so today, people are doing coral aquaculture all around the tropical parts of the world. But some of that early work was done back in the 1990s out in Micronesia and the American Pacific Islands. The next stop on my journey was a return to Florida. And in 2001, I was invited by Mote Marine Laboratory, which I currently am still there, to lead Mote's aquaculture research team. At that time, we had 6 directors of science research programs, all men. And then I was invited to come and start up a new team of scientists, the aquaculture group. And so was able to bring in a team of folks. And it was a wonderful opportunity for me because I had visited and seen so many types of technology that were being done around the world. And I could take what I saw that was working well, bring together the team and bring those teams together to design and build things in a way that would be functional. And so even today, almost 21 years later, our facility has expanded. We're 20 miles away from the ocean, and we work on closed recirculating aquaculture systems. I was Mote's first eminent scholar in fisheries and aquaculture at the laboratory, so a great honor and opportunity. Again, a focus of our work at Mote Marine Laboratory has been on developing strategies to expand production of sustainable seafood in Florida and in the United States and around the world to meet the global demands for high quality seafood. So I just want to talk a little bit about what's happened within my career, where I've shifted my focus from business, starting out as a secretary, which is what my parents thought women should do when they grew up, to becoming a marine science student with incredible mentors and inspiring colleagues who really supported me and helped me to grow as a scientist. And then changed my focus from research actually to directing research. And that was an incredible opportunity that then later on, I was able to move back and begin doing research again once I joined the staff at Mote. There were lots of changes that were involved because you had to make changes as a family to decide what you needed to do. And sometimes I had to step back from a higher level position to a lower level position, and then eventually step forward. And so the last career change that I made was my step over to Mote Marine Laboratory. And that was certainly a step forward where I had so many opportunities to do research, teach, and mentor undergraduate and graduate students. And here at Mote Marine Laboratory, I have really been focusing on mentoring women students through their masters and their PhDs. And so as the first opportunity that I had in the 2012 to become the president of the World Aquaculture Society. This is an organization, when I became president, was nearly 50 years old. I was the second woman to become the president of the World Aquaculture Society. But since then, there have been 3 more. So I'm happy to say that we have focused on making sure that women get nominated into those positions. We have incredible women scientists out there. So the key is mentoring, getting involved with those organizations, and making sure that women have a place at the table. I also, in 2016, was inducted as a fellow of the World Aquaculture Society, again, the second woman to fill that position in many, many years. And as Etienne said, I thought the biggest honor of my career was when President Obama nominated me to be a champion of change for sustainable seafood. But I want to go back to inspirational people. Dr. Earl Siegel, who inspired me early on in my career, was my first inspiration. But the second one was a wonderful woman, Dr. Eugenie Clark, who was the first director of the Mote Marine Laboratory in 1955. She was the director of the lab. It was only a 2-person laboratory at that time, but Jeannie had a long career. And when she retired from her faculty position at the University of Maryland, she came back to Florida, to Sarasota, and she was an emeritus scientist at Mote Marine Lab. And she inspired and amazed me with her love of the sea. This woman in her 90s was still scuba diving in the Red Sea and doing scientific research. And she came to every talk that I gave at Mote Marine Laboratory and always came up to see me. And I was so proud to have her there in the audience. And what she did was she really inspired me to give back to the next generation. And so my colleague now, Dr. Nicole Rohde, who works with me, I was able to give back to her and get her on from her undergraduate through her master's and then her PhD. And someday she's going to take over for me here as the director of Mote's aquaculture program. So when I retire, she's going to move into that position. And so we've been able to create a succession of leadership and of women scientists that have become successful professionals in the field. But we still have a long way to go. And as you can see, if you look at these pictures, they're mostly men in these leadership organizations. Here's the one on the left with the WASP presidents in 2014, only 1 woman in the group. And the WASP fellows in 2019, only 2 of us are women. By the time we get to 2019 with the presidents, we've got 2 more women involved with this. Actually, I think one of them is taking the picture. And so we've got now 3 women presidents in our organization. But in India, when I was there in 2013, again, a gigantic meeting of aquaculture leaders in India, only 1 woman in the room. So we have a ways to go, but I'm excited to say that I think that we're moving in the right direction. And all of us that are in this field need to be working to encourage women to move forward in science. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Kevin, that's such an inspiring story, and I'm really thankful that you've been able to share that with us. I'm equally keen to tell people about meetings that I've been to in the last 2 or 3 years where there aren't any women, and I'm really keen to see that change. Kevin, before I let you go and before we carry on the program, it seems that women are increasingly playing an important, empowered, equitable role in aquaculture science. And referring to what Audrey was presenting, women are playing leading roles in businesses that support aquaculture. And I think the last frontier is the female entrepreneur that actually runs a fish farm. And maybe, Kevin, if I can have a comment from you, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but how do we get those businesswomen to start playing a leading role in the actual production side, the business production side of aquaculture? Kevin, maybe your comment on that?
Well, you know, one of the, make sure my mic is still on. Yes, it is. One of the key factors is that they need to move into that position, you know, through a process. And so the colleagues that I know that are running aquaculture farms or aquaculture businesses usually worked in the field for a time in a development position. So coming in, I know a woman who runs one of the big tropical fish farms here in Florida, and she started off as being the hatchery manager at that farm, and then eventually moved into the president of that farm. And so usually people are starting at a position within an organization and either then moving up or moving on and starting their own farm from that that knowledge base. And I would say that's what happened too with me in my career, as I started off in an intermediate position and then moved into the leadership role. But again, that's one experience. Another one is we do have a company here, a supply company, and it's kind of like the Skretting story, a supply company that is run by a woman business owner. And she worked for many years as a technical support person in another supply company, gained that knowledge, and then moved on and started her own company. And so it's coming in, getting the knowledge, and then moving to the next level, I think, is the steps that we need to do.
Right. Great. Thank you for that insight, Kevin. All right. We've got just under 20 minutes left in this program. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just move into our announcements, because there's quite a few of them, and I fear we're going to run out of time at the end. Then we'll come back to one or two more questions, and then I'll ask each panel member to just close out the session with a view on how we can improve policy implementation around the empowerment of women, particularly in African aquaculture. So I think we've heard from Bernice earlier on that the policy environment is good. There are good policies, good policy statements around the empowerment, but the implementation is slow. So we'll close off with an opinion from each speaker on that ground, on that topic. We've also had join us today was Karen Viverica. Karen has done a lot of work in African aquaculture. She sent a comment through. I know she's actually sitting in another meeting, but Karen, if you're available, I'm going to open up your microphone and you can just repeat the comment that you gave on the Q&A panel earlier. Karen, if you're available, you're welcome to speak.
Thanks, Etienne. You can hear me?
Yes, thanks, Karen. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm actually in Cambodia right now, but they let me off the meetings. So, so what was your question?
Karen, you indicated on the Q&A panel that it's often difficult to get women to come forward when we run programs in Africa. And maybe if you could just repeat that sentiment.
Oh, right. Yeah. So I was talking from, a different level. And this is getting women fish farmers in developing countries to participate or actually enter into aquaculture if they haven't started yet. And in many of these development projects, of course, they say they want you to disaggregate your data by gender. And they're looking for, gender equity and everything. And you do. And so we started maybe in the 80s training extension agents in Rwanda. And back then they weren't even asking us to disaggregate data, but my counterpart and I decided that we would actually ask our agents how many women fish farmers they had. So just the act of looking to see how many women they are, that was new back then. And there were some women's groups growing fish, and because we had asked the extension agents this and they had to report on it in their monthly reports, they started getting more women just so they would have something to report on. And when they started getting more women, they said, oh, we actually like working with the women. They follow our advice much more closely. So it was just something pretty innocent that Pelagie, my counterpart, and I started doing. But over time, then the development agencies had, have a big push towards gender issues and empowering women and youth now. So everyone's counting everything. It's gotten to be a problem in that, people are trying to just fill in the numbers now. And when we were having the aquaculture project in Uganda, my counterpart and I, Nellie, said, okay, let's say we have 50 people in a training program. If we don't, if we only have 20 women, then we should just have 20 men. That gets our percentage up there, but that didn't really seem to make sense to us. But that's been our joke all around. If you want to get 50% women, just kick out a bunch of men. So these are issues, these are challenges that everyone is facing. And just wanted to bring that up.
Excellent, Karen, thank you. I've recently had a similar situation where we had to just play by the numbers, and that's also probably not the right strategy. But it's unfortunate when policy directs that we follow complete equality, that we do have situations where people just make up the numbers. So, Karen, thank you very much for that. I know you're busy, and thank you for sharing your views on that. We probably won't get to discuss all of this in our short program today, and I really do want to try and get to one or two questions, but let's finish off the announcements first. I can tell you that Aquaculture Africa Magazine is making great progress in our drive to be the leader in networking in aquaculture in Africa. We've now got an email database of well over 8,000 contacts, and our social media is running extremely well. Our various groups in WhatsApp, our group has been full for quite some time. Our Telegram group is looking good. Then I'd like to also tell you that our new website is up and running. The website can be accessed. There is still some work being done on the website, so it's not fully populated, but it should be fully functional quite soon. We are working on the price index for Africa, where we collecting price information on tilapia and catfish across the continent, and we'll be sharing that in the coming weeks. And then very excitingly, there are several nice webinars coming up. Before I show you what they are, just please help us to keep these sessions free by supporting our sponsors, Skretting and WorldFish and WISHH. And certainly if there are other sponsors out there, we are keen to talk because sponsorship makes this networking possible. Right, on our next webinar, in 2 weeks from today, we'll be featuring the work of TrueFish. And I find myself involved with TrueFish at the moment, and I'll be introducing the whole implementing team of TrueFish, including the FAO and WorldFish, and we'll be telling you what TrueFish is about as they boost aquaculture in East Africa. Then in about 4 weeks from now, we'll be discussing a paper that has just been published called Prospects for Aquaculture Development in Africa, a review of past performance to assess future potential. I'll have two guests there discussing with me. I've been honored to work on this paper as well, and we'll be showing you the information that's been collected for the paper and looking at the recommendations going forward. So quite an important one. You will be getting the links to all of these webinars in your email, so watch out for those. We're also planning sessions in the coming weeks on vaccines, which we'll be revisiting, as well as further talks on tilapia. So watch out for all of that information. On your screen right now is the email addresses of all the speakers today. So I'm going to leave those email addresses up while we close out the session and while we try and take one or two questions. And then if you want to contact any of the speakers, please feel free to do so. I do want to, just before I get to the questions, just the one announcement that I did miss is, please, those of you that are going to Egypt for the WAS African Conference, the WAS African Chapter Conference, I look forward to seeing you there. I'm sure they are still taking registrations, so contact either myself. Many of you will know Blessing. Make contact with them. Hopefully we can see you in Egypt for the conference. Right. We've taken a lot of questions for today's session. The question panel, I want to encourage you to go and read those questions there. A person from Bangladesh, I think it's Haik, if I've got the pronunciation right, has posted some very important strategies around the empowerment of women. Go and read them in the Q&A panel. It's been really helpful to read through it. I see there was a question from, I think it's Joachim from the DRC, or the Democratic Republic of the Congo, saying that women already play a key role in the aquaculture value chain. And then saying, indeed, the distribution or marketing of fisheries products is essentially ensured by women. Perhaps in the future, we'll initiate and investigate to give the figures. Joachim, I've personally seen women playing a key role in the distribution value chain of aquaculture products. And yes, I look forward to discussing this with you. We do need to have a webinar about aquaculture in the DRC at some stage. So Joachim, I'm looking forward to picking up this discussion so that we can look at that element. We have received many questions. I've got a whole page full around particular matters in the empowerment of women. I've seen questions around how should women start in aquaculture. I've seen questions about how can women get into the entrepreneurial environment of aquaculture. So without trying to deal with these individually, I've already said I'm going to ask the panel members to make a statement on how we can improve policy implementation. But if you've got any advice, Audrey, Bernice, and Kevin, on how women can start off. Kevin, you've already said some of it, but if there's any more advice, please add that into your final comments as well. Right, on that note, maybe Audrey, can we start with you, your final comments on how do we improve policy implementation and where do women get started? Audrey, the microphone, you can open up and you've got the floor.
Aquaculture generally within my area, as I said before, is still sort of in its infancy. And I think that it is an initiative. As much as laws are gonna be made, you need to involve a third of your employees or a third of anyone you're involved with to be women or something. It's still a personal initiative. And I have gone through the participants and all that, and I realize we are all people. Some of them, many I know, many I don't, but I realize we all hold places in the aquaculture industry globally. And it is all an initiative, a personal initiative. If you hold a position and you know you are able to encourage, you are able to train, you are able to give women a platform, an opportunity to start, if you're able to fund them, if you're able to start up a project that you can involve them, if you're able to train them, then that's the best thing we can do right now, because there is not much you can do if we do not want to do it ourselves. The people already in the industry, the people already doing this, and it is a personal goal to get up and running a cooperative of some sorts within Kenya, where women who are doing the smallest scale in aquaculture can be able to sell their 3 tons of fish at good prices, so they can also realize a profit. Women can actually become very, very good farmers. From all the farms I worked in, before I joined Skretting, I was a farmer, and most of the feeders, which is a very crucial part of aquaculture, are women. Why? The patience, the pride of bringing up fish, and sometimes they were never there when we were slaughtering the fish because they do not want to see their babies go. So I believe women have a very good place, sometimes not all into the scientific and research area, but just the hands work, doing it because they love it and doing it because they can really, really do it very well. I have seen them do it. Very minimal people are doing it. I was the only lady in a whole managerial team at the beginning of my career. And it's a bit draining when you know you're not gonna be listened to because, well, you're a lady. We need, as men, we need to look at the lady in the office and actually listen to them, because it somehow eats them up that, well, I'm not going to say it because no one will ever listen. It is a personal initiative for all of us to do it, especially if you hold a position to help. Yeah. I saw Karen raise her hand, but I'm not very sure if it was for me.
Sorry, Audrey,
I was playing with my buttons, that's all.
Oh, okay. All right. I think that's all from me, 18.
Great, Audrey. Thank you for your participation today. I'm sure we're going to be collaborating more. And thank you for those final words. Bernice, your final take, just very shortly in a minute or so, if I can ask you to give us your final thoughts.
Oh, thanks, Etienne, and thanks for the speakers and the inputs from the others. I think really valuable inputs, and really we've started the conversation, within the community. So thanks for creating that platform. So I think Audrey's really said it all, but maybe from a policy maker sort of implementer perspective is that I think we just need to continue to be intentional about how we work, and to learn from the best practices, try to put them into place, and really ensure that the enabling environment is there to enable gender diversity. In terms of the statistics, I think they're there to really show us how we're doing. Sometimes, the numbers become the goal, but I think we need to be more sensitive in terms of the context, the circumstances, as I spoke to earlier, and we need to just find ways to be innovative, to involve people, and to really make sure that the programs that are developed are relevant over the long term and inform decision makers, because that's really what it's about. We're trying to make sure that the decisions that we take are informed by what's happening on the ground. So we need to get more equity in terms of inputs into the decisions that are taken, and I think that's really where we'll help to drive the implementation. So thanks very much.
Fantastic, Bernice. Thank you very much for that. Bernice, on that note, I really look forward to close cooperation with Awuda NEPAD through this year. I know we have been working together, but I think you said it. Let's kick up this conversation with the community. And thank you very much for your inputs, Bernice. As always, I know you're busy, but it's been great having you this afternoon.
Thanks, Etienne.
Thank you. Kevin, the final word is to you. Kevin, before I forget, Kevin, please send my regards to Ken, and please tell Ken that he looks as good today as he did in those photographs in your presentation. And I can fully understand why you fell in love with him. He's a gorgeous looking man. So if you could send that message to him, I'd really appreciate it. Kevin, the final word is yours. If you can close out for us today. Thank you.
Oh, Etienne, thank you. I can't wait to tell him that. That will really give him a smile for the day. I just want to close off with encouragement, and also with echoing what Karen Vavrica said earlier, because I do think that it is so important that we focus on striving for excellence. And so as we move forward and we bring everyone to the table, giving them a fair chance to participate and to contribute, because we all have a lot to contribute to this field, we need to make sure that we're striving for excellence. And so back when I was working on this many, many years ago, it was hard to get to the table because there was a lot of pushback. But now there are opportunities for that to happen. But we've got to make sure, in order to make all of this work and to move aquaculture forward, it's got to be focused on excellence. And so there are wonderful scientists out there that are coming on board and moving up in the field. So I look forward to working with my colleagues here on this panel, as well as other colleagues around the world, to make this a success. You know, I thought everyone's comments were very right on. So thank you for letting me be a part of this today.
Great, Kevin, as always, much appreciated, and thank you for your time and effort. I know we got you up early, but really valuable input. To the panel members, thank you once again to all of you. Please check that we get a copy of the presentation so that we can send that to delegates in their emails tomorrow. Thank you to everybody that has joined us. We had a good audience. We had a lively webinar today. We will see you in the next one on the 17th of February. I have just posted the link to the next webinar in the chat panel. I will leave the email addresses up for another minute or so, but otherwise have a fantastic rest of your day wherever you are. It's been fun being with you. Stay well.